Late August in New York usually means one thing for tennis fans. The US Open is about to take over the city. The main draw hasn't even started, the biggest matches are still days away, and players are supposed to be quietly fine-tuning their games on the practice courts. But at the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, one routine practice session suddenly looks anything but routine. Fans are packed along the fence, phones are held high, Philippine flags are waving everywhere, blue, red, white, and that unmistakable golden sun. And here's the crazy part. They're not waiting for Jannik Sinner, Aryna Sabalenka, or Carlos Alcaraz. They're waiting for Alex Eala. The 21-year-old Filipina has gone from fighting for recognition on tour to becoming one of the most passionately supported young players in tennis. And what happens when she finishes practice shows just how dramatically her world has changed. To understand why fans gathering around a practice court matters, you have to understand the kind of season Eala has been experiencing. According to the source material, she began 2026 outside the world's top 50. Tennis insiders knew about her talent, and Filipino fans had followed her for years, but internationally she was still trying to establish herself. Then everything accelerated. The source describes victories over multiple top 10 opponents, a fourth-round Wimbledon appearance that included defeating the defending champion, and her first WTA Tour-level singles title in Washington, D.C., where she defeated Jessica Pegula in an emotional final. It also describes Eala becoming the first Filipino woman to break into the world's top 20. Suddenly, she wasn't simply a promising player anymore. She had become one of the biggest stories of the season. But there was another story developing alongside the results. Everywhere Eala traveled, Filipino supporters seemed to follow. Melbourne, Dubai, Rome, London, Toronto, Cincinnati. The cities changed, but the scenes started looking remarkably familiar. Flags appeared, fans lined up early. Practice sessions attracted crowds that organizers might normally expect for actual matches. Her coach, Joan Bosch, is described in the source as acknowledging that Eala's team never anticipated the sheer scale of the attention. Supporters were reportedly traveling between tournaments just to watch her, while others arrived hours before gates opened hoping to secure the best possible position. So when Eala stepped onto a practice court at Flushing Meadows before the US Open, seeing fans there wasn't necessarily surprising anymore. What made the moment special was how personally the crowd connected with her. Picture the scene. It's a humid late summer morning in Queens. Eala is dressed for training and working through the same routine professional players repeat countless times throughout a season. Serves, cross-court rallies, movement drills, footwork, and technical adjustments with her coach. There's no scoreboard, no ranking points, no trophy waiting at the end. It's work. Behind the fence, however, people have been gathering since before she arrived. Some are carrying Philippine flags, others have homemade signs. Phones are ready because everyone wants that one photo or short video they can send to friends and family. Fans are coordinating with each other, figuring out where Eala might leave the court and hoping they'll get an opportunity to wave, ask for an autograph, or simply tell her how proud they are. That's Eala's new reality. Practice used to be the quiet part of professional tennis, the place where a player could disappear into repetition with a coach and a basket of balls. Now, for Eala, practice can become an event of its own. The source says she has previously discussed being caught off guard when supporters gathered around practice courts, especially earlier in her rise when she wasn't accustomed to that level of attention. By New York, she had experienced it enough times that you might assume nothing could surprise her anymore. Apparently, that isn't quite true. As practice winds down, Eala towels off and focuses on the little things players normally do before leaving the court. Grab the water bottle. Talk briefly with the coach. Think about what worked. Think about what needs improvement before the next match. Then the energy behind the fence changes. A few voices begin calling out. More join them. Before long, the sound grows into a unified chant. Alex. 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 Eala looks toward the crowd, and for a moment, the competitive focus seems to disappear. What replaces it is something much more human. Surprise, happiness, and almost disbelief that all these people came out for her when she wasn't even playing a match. That reaction fits something Eala has reportedly discussed herself. The source describes her explaining that several moments of fan support, from the Australian Open to tournaments in the Middle East and her return home after Wimbledon, continued to catch her by surprise. Even after experiencing this phenomenon repeatedly, she sometimes forgets just how many people are following her journey. And maybe that's exactly why the reaction resonates. She hasn't completely normalized it. For fans watching from the outside, a packed practice court might not sound like a huge deal. Famous athletes attract crowds, that's sports. But tennis practice sessions normally don't generate the same excitement as matches. There's no official drama, no prize money, and nothing meaningful on the scoreboard. Most people would rather watch a competitive match than somebody hit the same serve dozens of times. Yet Eala's supporters aren't waiting for competition to begin before they care. At Cincinnati, the source says fans were gathering before the gates opened specifically because they wanted good positions for Eala. Earlier at the Australian Open, organizers reportedly underestimated how many supporters might attend her practice sessions several days before she actually competed. New York appears to continue the same pattern. That's when this becomes bigger than one viral fan interaction. Eala has become an emotional focal point for Filipino communities around the world. Whether she's playing for a championship or simply practicing her second serve, people want to be there because of what her presence represents. And Eala appears to understand that responsibility. The source describes her speaking openly about realizing that her success means more than her personal results. As one of the few Filipinas competing on tennis's biggest stages, she understands that people see themselves represented through her. That's a tremendous thing for a 21-year-old athlete to carry. The Philippines has enormous sporting passion, but historically much of that international attention has centered on sports such as basketball and boxing. Eala's rise gives tennis a new entry point. A young fan who never cared about a WTA tournament might suddenly check the score because Alex is playing. A kid who never considered picking up a racket might ask for tennis lessons because someone from the Philippines is now competing against the world's best. That's how one athlete can influence an entire sporting culture, and that's why seeing Eala genuinely moved by fans after practice matters. It takes something enormous, the weight of representation, national pride, expectations, and international attention, and compresses it into a simple interaction between a player and the people cheering for her. There's another layer to New York specifically. Flushing Meadows already means something in Eala's story. According to the supplied material, she won the US Open Junior Girls Singles Championship there in 2022. Years later, the source describes her returning with an entirely different status. Not as a junior hoping people notice her, but as an established professional carrying major expectations. That difference is enormous. The young player who once came to New York trying to prove what she might become is now arriving with fans waiting outside practice courts. The source also describes the build-up surrounding her appearance as extending beyond matches. Promotional attention, special tournament opportunities, fashion and apparel interest, and growing commercial momentum have all added to the sense that Eala is entering a completely different phase of her career. But that naturally creates a difficult question. Does all this love actually help her? Or does it create additional pressure? Because being adored by thousands of people sounds incredible until you're the person expected to perform for them. Every flag can become another reminder of expectations. Every supporter who traveled hundreds of miles can make a defeat feel heavier. Every child wearing your name can make you feel responsible for giving them something to celebrate. And Eala is still only 21. She's balancing the physical grind of professional tennis with something most players never experience at this level, becoming a national sporting symbol while her career is still developing. That could become overwhelming. But there's another way to look at it. Instead of treating those crowds as pressure, Eala can treat them as energy. The source describes her speaking about how supporters can make her feel at home wherever she competes. That mindset may be crucial. Home doesn't necessarily have to mean Manila. Sometimes home can be a section of a stadium in Washington filled with Philippine flags. Sometimes it can be Melbourne. Sometimes Cincinnati. And sometimes it can be Queens. If Eala can continue seeing these crowds as support rather than obligation, the noise surrounding her might become one of her greatest emotional advantages. Return to that practice court for a second. No trophy, no television spectacle, no match point. Just Eala finishing another training session and suddenly hearing people chant her name. She looks up. She smiles. Maybe she waves. Maybe she puts a hand near her heart. Maybe she takes an extra moment before walking away. Whatever the exact gesture, the meaning is obvious. She notices them, and fans notice that she notices. That relationship matters because the source portrays Eala as someone who often stays around to acknowledge supporters, sign autographs, take pictures, and interact with children who have waited to see her. That accessibility helps explain why the connection feels unusually personal. The fans aren't only celebrating her victories, they feel like they're traveling through the journey with her, and that may be the most important part of the Eala phenomenon heading into the US Open. Results will always matter. Rankings matter. Grand Slam rounds matter. Eventually, the tennis itself determines how far her career goes, but something has already happened that no scoreboard can fully measure. She has given Filipino tennis fans around the world somebody to gather around. A Philippine flag appearing at a practice court in New York isn't just a flag anymore. For one fan, it might represent the country their parents left decades ago. For another, it might represent home. For a Filipino-American kid, it might represent the first professional tennis player who makes the sport feel personally relevant. And for Eala herself, every flag may be another reminder that the journey she thought belonged to her has become something shared. As the US Open unfolds, the pressure will rise, the opponents will get tougher. There will be great days and frustrating ones. That's unavoidable, but one thing seems increasingly clear. Eala won't have to search very hard for support. If a routine practice session can attract this kind of emotion, imagine what happens when the matches actually begin. New York is already loud. The Filipino fans are already there. And Eala, despite everything she has experienced during her rise, still seems capable of being surprised by how much she means to them. Maybe that's exactly why the connection keeps getting stronger. Because underneath the rankings, sponsorships, headlines, and expectations, fans still see the same young woman who looks genuinely grateful every time she realizes they showed up again. And in a sport built around individuals standing alone on opposite sides of a net, there's something powerful about knowing that when Eala walks onto the court, an entire community is walking in with her.